Presented the high point for an entire car culture that has been lost to history. It provides us with a tantalizing glimpse of the creativity and innovation of France's pre-war car industry. The Delage D8S stands tall as one of the most incredible luxury cars ever built and is absolutely one of a kind. In the 1950s, customization was king. How did one entrepreneur capitalize on this trend to create one of the most iconic cars in the world? Find out right now on One of a Kind. In 1956, everyone in America wanted a Cadillac Eldorado. The premium car on the American road, the Eldorado redefined what a luxury car could be. It was America's dream automobile. But the thing about luxury is, not everyone can afford it. And one man saw an opportunity to take America's most popular car, the Chevrolet Bel Air, and transform it into a car that was affordable, but would be as distinctive as a Cadillac. This is the story of the poor man's Cadillac, and of a man who had a dream to create his own custom car on the shoulders of America's favorite chassis. This is the story of a legendary car called the El Morocco. There is no doubt that it is one of the rarest models in the history of modified Chevrolets. In late 1955, the Cadillac Eldorado was the undisputed king of the American road.
A magnificent Eldorado town car by Cadillac.
Reuben Allender, a millionaire Detroit industrialist, recognized America's love affair with the Eldorado, but he also knew that few could afford it.
Around 55 or 56, he got this idea, so he started using Chevys because they were more accessible and much more popular than any other car.
Being a car enthusiast, Allender was no stranger to customized cars. In the mid-1950s, buying a car was only the first step in ownership. Once you drove it off the lot, you altered the suspension or hopped up the carburetor. You customized it to suit your individual tastes. A car from the factory was only a suggestion of what it could be. Customizing your own car was an American rite of passage ever since the automobile was mass-produced. In the beginning, cars didn't come with much of anything in the way of decoration or luxury, so Americans rolled up their sleeves and did it themselves. As factory cars started adding features of their own, customizers got even more creative. They cut through the sheet metal and swapped out the bumpers, grills, lights, and more to create a style that was uniquely their own. With an advanced knowledge of custom cars, Allender realized that America had an appetite for luxury without the pocketbook to match. Thousands of people were already modifying their Chevrolets. Allender had a hunch there would be a market for special orders.
In 1956, a company by the name of Allender and Company started doing modifications to the 56 convertibles. They made 19 56 convertibles. That was the first time that General Motors had ever allowed anyone to modify their car and still keep the factory warranty.
He was known as a good businessman. One of the stories I heard, his first big deal that he bought, he had sold it before he even bought it. His one passion was he was a wheeler dealer. He was somebody that liked to take nothing and make something out of it.
Using a batch of Chevy Bel Airs that he bought from a local dealer, Allender made a few modifications to the car. Under the hood, the car was untouched. But on the outside, Allender scrounged up spare parts from his warehouse to transform the car's style into something extraordinary.
Well, it was cheaper to do it cosmetically, change the bumpers or change the front of the car or the fins. That's what you saw. You didn't see the engine or anything else inside. But the fins, I know, were the big thing because that made it look like a Cadillac.
The rear bumper guards were taken directly from old 1937 Dodge truck headlamp shells. Next up was a pair of 1955 Dodge Coronet tail lamps, as well as saddle door top trim made from 1955 Willys dash panels, used as an accent to the bumper. A new hood ornament was designed to mimic that of a Cadillac. The finishing touches, of course, were dual fins that resembled the back of a Cadillac. Crafted to replace the rear fenders of the Chevrolet, they were fused and feathered into the original fenders so as to be invisible after being painted.
It was a styling, is what they was trying to get to simulate a more luxurious car than a Chevy, but yet for only $700 more, you could have Cadillac styling in a 57 Chevy.
From all the scrounging up of available spare parts, the work on the car was a little like creating Frankenstein's monster. But the result was absolutely incredible. When Allender saw how distinctive his custom cars looked, he decided to give them a new name before releasing them to the world. Something that evoked the dream car everyone wanted. Allender settled on the name El Morocco to evoke the exotic foreign names of the Biarritz and the Seville, as well as to get as close to El Dorado as he dared. With a luxury look for a lower price, Allender expected the cars to be hot sellers. But those predictions turned out to be optimistic. Despite initial predictions that Allender would sell 10 El Moroccos per day, he wound up selling only 20. Total. Although Allender's instincts were right, his pricing was wrong. Yes, you could purchase an El Morocco for half the cost of an El Dorado, but it was still almost $1,000 more than the Chevrolet from which it was modified. The extra expense caused a lot of potential buyers to balk. If they were going to spend that kind of money, they thought, they might as well buy the real thing. With only 20 El Moroccos sold, Allender had to decide whether to walk away or double down. The effect of that decision resulted in one of the rarest and most coveted cars in American history.
Sam Adams, at the peak of its freshness, there's nothing better.
Our mission is to make sure when you crack open that bottle of Sam Adams, you're getting the freshest beer you can possibly get. If it's not fresh, we buy it back.
We spent so much time selecting the ingredients and using traditional brew processes. We want to make sure everybody gets a fresh Sam.
Mid-grade dark roast forced fresh, full-tank brain freeze cake donuts, rolling hot dogs, bag of ice, antifreeze, wash and dry, diesel self-serve fix-a-flat, jumper cables, 5% cash back. Right now, get 5% cash back at gas stations. It pays to discover.
Is it fast?
It's got 10 speeds, my friend.
Is it fast?
Got a lightning bolt on it, doesn't it?
Is it fast? I don't even know if it's street legal. Is it safe?
Oh yeah, it's a Volkswagen.
The security of a Jetta, one of 9 Volkswagen models named a 2012 IIHS Top Safety Pick.
Next Tuesday on an all-new Auto Week's Vincetta Garage.
Where do car designers get their ideas?
We enroll in the exclusive College for Creative Studies.
Car design started in this building. It's all happening here.
We manufacture the ultimate motorcycle.
How does it go from concept to metal?
Through my hands.
And we test the metal of the Mercedes CLS 550.
It's got 402 horsepower. It's angled. It's got dual tailpipes.
Auto Week's Vincetta Garage. All new episode next Tuesday at 8:30 only on Velocity.
The El Morocco was a customized Chevrolet Bel Air designed to look like the most coveted car on the planet, the Cadillac El Dorado. Using custom fabrication and spare parts, industrialist Reuben Allender hoped to sell hundreds of them at half the cost of a real El Dorado. But the El Morocco fell into a dark valley of customer demand. Too expensive for a Chevrolet customer and too cheap for a Cadillac customer.
Price-wise, it was in between, like a Chevy and a Cadillac. And, you know, so the theory was if people could afford to spend, say, $3,000 at the time, you could go spend another $1,500 or $2,000 and buy the real thing.
The El Morocco floundered, selling a total of 20 cars in its first year. Allender had to make a decision to continue production on the El Morocco or walk away for good. Allender believed in his modifications. So when the 1957 Chevrolet came out, he bought a new batch and went to work. This time he focused on the hardtop, making only 3 convertibles to complement them.
And in '57, he started the 2-door hardtops and 4-door hardtops and painted the tops silver on them so that it emulate the Cadillac. But it really didn't take off. It was about $775 for the modification. When he got done with the hardtops, he decided he would try to do some convertibles again. So he did the last 3 cars were convertibles. This was the second to last car made as a convertible, but they were competing with the Edsels and the Oldsmobiles and the Buicks, and I guess the people just didn't take savvy to them, you might say.
The fabrication of the rear fins proved to be more challenging than anticipated. This required major metalwork changes, welding steel tail fin extensions onto the fender. Allender didn't want anything to go to waste, so everything he removed from the Chevrolet was resold to local collision shops. Again, Allender didn't waste time underneath the hood. All changes he made to the Chevys were purely cosmetic. The El Moroccos featured Chevy's 283 V8, and included Power Glide automatic, radio, and heater. One final touch was a leather pad on the steering wheel. On it was stamped El Morocco, custom built for, with a space for the name of the owner. But the restyled and retooled 1957 El Morocco wasn't enough to raise Allender's fortunes. Part of the problem was that the price was still too high, even though Allender dropped it by over $200. But another reason may have been the increasing reluctance of General Motors to allow the proud Chevrolet name to be modified by just anyone.
I'm not so sure he had an agreement with them at all, because from what I've heard, one of the reasons he stopped doing it is because Chevy started giving him a hard time because of what he was doing.
The story goes that a police officer pulled over an El Morocco and was surprised to see the car registered under the El Morocco name. That story made it back to Edward Cole, the Chevrolet general manager, who didn't appreciate his brand of automobile going under an alias. In any event, Allender quietly wound down production of his beloved El Moroccos, pulling the plug in 1957. All in all, fewer than 40 cars rolled out of his shop, and of those, only a precious 3 were convertible 1957 El Moroccos.
People would always see it driving down the street, and you would, especially with younger people, you'd see their heads turn and look and see, what is that? Where'd you get that?
Of the 1.7 to 1.8 million 57 Chevys, the El Morocco is considered to be the rarest of all cars.
Arguably, the El Morocco has become more iconic and legendary than the car it was trying to imitate. Without question, it has become one of the rarest cars in the world. In fact, the car is so rare that most people have never seen one in person. We'll find out what happens when they catch their first glimpse right after this.
Every year we travel to Baudette, Minnesota to see how our luxury vehicles equipped with Acura's exclusive super handling all-wheel drive perform under the most brutal, punishing conditions. If your winters are tougher than this, you don't need a new car. You need a new place to live.
Take advantage of attractive offers on the 2012 Acura MDX for well-qualified customers.
When your cable's on the fritz, you get frustrated. When you get frustrated, your daughter imitates. When your daughter imitates, she gets thrown out of school. When she gets thrown out of school, she meets undesirables. When she meets undesirables, she ties the knot with undesirables. And when she ties the knot with undesirables, you get a grandson with a dog collar. Don't have a grandson with a dog collar. Get rid of cable and upgrade to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV.
His words carry weight that would break a less interesting man's jaw. He's won trophies for his game face alone. He bowls overhand. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Friday, February 3rd, the competition for the crown continues.
Shuffle up and deal.
Find out who will win on the next Epic Poker. Friday, February 3rd at 10, only on Velocity. They push the limits of speed.
It was a state-of-the-art race car.
And design.
The sensuous curve, the voluptuous shapes.
They changed the industry.
Parts of the car would start appearing on future GM cars.
And our culture.
You have a major attraction for the public.
They still stop traffic, but make your heart race.
Finding this car was like finding a Picasso in the attic.
They're definitely one of a kind. Don't miss an all-new episode next Tuesday at 9:30, only on Velocity.
The unique styling of the El Morocco continues to make it one of the most eye-catching cars in history. But with such a limited run, virtually no one has ever seen one. For many, the El Morocco is a myth, a legend of the road.
As the car became more valuable, then you heard more stories, and it was like, oh, gee, you know, what was that? And your grandfather did that.
When we took it out of the trailer, everybody at the show came over to the car, wanted to know what it was. One guy even made a comment, he said, boy, it looks like you put the back of a Cadillac